Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Well, if you are a fan of Berettas, you may like today's video because it addresses a question that has been asked at least by myself at one time, which is, what do you do when you take a Beretta 92 and instead of it being a double action, single action with a decocker safety combo, we put a frame safety only and make it single action only? Well, you get the Beretta 92X. Do these features, does this combination make this a good handgun for concealed carry? Well, we're going to look it all over and try to answer those questions for you in just a minute. All right, once again, welcome back. Thanks for being with us today. If this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've watched our videos before and you just haven't had a chance to do so until now and you like our content, please consider subscribing. You can locate the subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your computer screen there, or if you're on a mobile device, you can scroll down below the video and hit the subscribe button that way. It's a simple thing that helps out a whole lot and we really appreciate it. So, Beretta 92X. I have to admit that I do like Berettas. They're not for everyone. And, and one of the first things we get into, of course, we always do a little size comparison. That is going to matter on this because as much as I like these guns, these are not small guns. And I'll give you an idea just to let you see what I'm talking about. But, so you take the Beretta 92X here. This is a 5-inch barrel. So, just for comparison, this is a Glock 17. Glock 17 is not a small gun for concealed carry, and you can see that it's every bit as big as that firearm is going to be, and it's probably going to be a bit heavier because you have a lot more, you got more weight of materials in the Beretta than you do in the Glock for sure. And these comparisons are always just to kind of get you to think. If you've ever carried, say, the Glock 17, you know what the weight feels like. If you had trouble carrying something like this on your hip and being comfortable, well, you might want to think about that too. Another easy comparison I like to make for this would be just a standard 1911 any old variety. This is one of my most basic 1911s laying around right here, but as you can see, it's on order, it's actually bigger, if you really get down to it, than the 1911. And of course, if you're a fan of 1911s, you might be a fan of the actual method of operation here, since this being single action only and having a frame safety, aside from not having a grip safety, they're a lot alike. Now, for me, if I'm going to carry a Beretta, I tend to go with a smaller version. For me, I like Berettas, but the 92 Compact is about as large as I can really comfortably carry, which is this gun right here. And it's still pretty big. This is my Wilson Combat 92G here, and I like this one quite a bit. This gun is probably on the high end of what I can actually carry and be comfortable, and you can see how much larger this one is. So it's just something to think about. If you are a fan of the guns and you're already used to carrying one, may not make any difference. But I always like to make this comparison in the beginning so you can evaluate what it's going to be like to actually carry the weight of the gun. All right, we're going to jump right into the features here. Before we do, we want to take a moment to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the Beretta 92X for our tabletop review today. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. So, as usual, before we start getting into all the details here, we're going to do a quick safety check, let you see that our magazine is empty and removed, and you can see that we are clear. There's nothing in the chamber. So we are just as safe as we can be. So let's start at the top. We typically like to do a little top-down evaluation here. And the first thing you'll notice, of course, is your sights. You have a rear, blackout sight here in the rear, and then you have your fiber optic sight in the front. I'm totally okay with this. As long as I've got some color on my front sight, I don't really mind what type that they use, and this is a pretty decent sight picture. You can pick that front sight up pretty easy, and if you've shot a Beretta before, which we'll get to in the range section here, you know that In my experience anyway, generally they're very good shooting guns, and so a good sight picture is a part of all that. These are optics ready. They don't come with the optics plate. My understanding from talking to a couple of colleagues that this is the kind of thing that you have to order from Beretta. Apparently they verify your purchase and then they send you a plate. So, be nice if that came in the box, but I've had to do that before with other guns, and that's not a big deal, so that's okay. I'm not going to run an optic on mine anyway if this was a carry gun, because I know people like to do that, but it's kind of like with your accessory rail here. I'm glad they have this, because if I was using this for home defense, I'd like to, maybe put a light laser system or whatever on that. But to me, for a carry gun, when you start adding all this stuff to the gun, it kind of negates the purpose of it being a carry gun. It gets so big you can't even really conceal it. So I try to avoid doing that myself. But anyway, moving right along. You've got some pretty good serrations here on the front and rear, and of course, if you have an optic here, this will come in handy because you got something to grab on besides the optic. We mentioned that it has a frame safety. Okay, it's right there. Of course, you got your hammer. Remember, this is single action only. You have your slide stop, and you have your takedown lever, and these are very simple to take down. Now, just so you'll know here, your safety is ambidextrous, which I am glad about that, so lefties and righties both have no issue there. As with all 92s I've ever shot, they have nice big trigger guards, which I like. I hate trying to have my hand on a gun that I'm having to hunt around to get my finger inside the trigger guard, so I like that. The trigger, I like the trigger on this gun a lot. Now, I'll be completely transparent with you. I'm not a fan of single action only handguns of any kind. And that's just my preference, and the reason why is because I like double action, single action if I can get it, because the double action trigger pull in itself is a bit of a safety mechanism, and I'll show you what I mean. Putting this one down and bringing back my Wilson Combat for a minute. When you have a double action, single action, as you probably are well aware, you have this harder trigger pull for double action, and then you have a much lighter trigger pull for single. Well, if I have this cocked, and yes, you have the option to have the safety on, but you're having to do a lot of things, and I know a lot of people that they have experienced situations where they're trying to shoot and trying to remember to take the safety off a firearm if it's in a cocked and locked configuration, things like that. It's not necessarily something that they feel like they could do when they're in a high-stress situation and lose their fine motor skills. So to me, I'd prefer to be able to just draw this from the holster and pull the trigger. And even though it's a longer, heavier trigger pull, it's not going to bother me because I know the gun is going to go bang. To carry this and, cocked and locked position, well, that's fine. You can do that. And if you're comfortable, like if you carry a 1911, obviously, this particular setup is how you would carry your gun in the holster if you're ready to go. And for some people, that's great. For me, I'm really a much bigger fan of having that double action trigger pull just as a safety feature. But anyway, it's got nice G10 grips. I think it feels very good. I think the serrations on the front and back feel nice. And you got a pretty good size beaver tail here that keeps your hand protected. I've heard some people complain about this because they like to ride the safety with their thumb, but I don't do that. I keep my hand underneath. So I think a normal safe grip, you shouldn't be having a problem getting into the safety. And that's just my take on it. So I think that it's got a pretty good set of features. It's a nice gun. By the way, it does come with 2 magazines, which is nice. So that is your overview of features on the 92X. Well, of course, I mentioned in the beginning that if you're a Beretta fan, I think you'd really like this gun. And for me, all of my Beretta 92s I've ever had have been very good shooting guns. As a matter of fact, I've only had one that was even remotely a problem. It was a surplus gun. And it was a little finicky about my reloads from time to time. Other than that, it shot pretty well. You know, S&B, PMC range ammo, not a problem at all. These are both 115 grain rounds. I normally try both of the SIG V crowns. I really like this particular defensive round, and for clarification, SIG doesn't pay me a dime to talk about this ammo. I've just used it a lot, and this isn't all I use. I'm a pretty big fan of the gold dot too. I use this one quite a bit, the 124 grain. I like it as well. But what I base this on, and even some of the critical duty here, like I say, what I base it on is how well I can shoot it. And sometimes I'll shoot, 4 different types of ammo, and you get this random number of which one's the best. And in this particular case, the gold dot was the most accurate. And because I'll shoot groups with every type of ammo, and basically I'll see which one is best, and I'll change the order that it's done in. And, as scientific as you can, there's nothing perfect, but if you consistently shoot one type of ammo better than another, then there's something to be said for that, and it could just be your individual skill set. But they haven't been picky about ammunition. The trigger on this gun is really nice. Let me do another quick safety check for you here, just so you can see we're still looking at a clear weapon. You can see there's nothing in the chamber, and I like this trigger a lot. You have a little bit of travel right here when you engage it, and you feel it come up real quick. Well, once you hit that little wall, it's just a small amount of, it's just a very quick, crisp little trigger. My scale put this at about 3.5 pounds, and consistently. Some pulls were closer to 3, some were closer to 3.5, but it was very consistent. But when you get into it, it's just not, it's beautiful. And you don't have to be an expert shot to get really good groupings with one of these. And if you're shooting a double action, single action version, obviously, you can shoot it in single action all you want to and get the same results. I think this trigger is probably a lot better than the standard trigger on a 92 Beretta. Is it better than my Wilson Combat? Probably not. It's good. It's very smooth. But I don't think it's on par with that Wilson trigger. That thing is just amazing. But it's a very good shooting gun. It doesn't seem to be picky about ammunition, and it's pretty reliable. Now, I always mention things like reliability, and to be quite honest with you, if anyone's making a new handgun that's not reliable, that's kind of criminal at this point. We've been making firearms long enough that if you're a major company producing handguns, that's something that we ought to be able to get right by now. If there's any issues with a certain type of ammo or something, that should be publicly known ahead of time. But overall, good shooting, reliable, and to me it's pretty comfortable. I've had some people, like I said, they've complained about this grip, people who like to ride the safety. I don't do that anyway. I think if you have a standard grip on this gun, it feels very good. And the G10 grips obviously are a bit more aggressive than standard grips, but they don't bother me at all. I have these on a lot of firearms. So overall, I think it's great shooting, and it's comfortable to shoot as well. So what's it like to carry the Beretta 92X as a carry gun? Well, in a word, it's heavy. Okay, don't get me wrong. I have holsters that are pretty good at managing these larger firearms. Probably my favorite for doing that is going to be the Crossbreed Super Tuck here. I have tons of these holsters. I like them. Once again, they don't pay me either. But I like this type of holster because it distributes the weight of the firearm really well. You got a clip on each side here. You got I get the horsehide, and this against the body is really good for sweat control, those kinds of things. And of course you have the Kydex, so you have a little bit of retention here because the trigger guard has to slip past this little bump. If you're going to carry a larger gun, this is my favorite way to do it. Now, even with the good support in a proper holster, it's heavy. And this isn't something that I would want to carry around with me, I think, all day, every day. I just don't think I'd be comfortable with that. As I said, the biggest Beretta that I typically will carry on me anyway is going to be my little compact version. And even it's so heavy, I don't do it very often. This is definitely a once in a blue moon winter gun. But if you're the type person who carries a larger firearm already, you know, if you're used to carrying a Beretta, this may be nothing for you. And if you're used to the weight already and you've got a good holster like that or another one that, you know, can spread the weight out well and is padded well, I think you'll be fine. I can do it. It's just not something I'd be comfortable with getting in and out of the car. It's just, it's so big that I know it's there all the time. And that's the biggest mistake for me on a gun, is when I get to a type that's so large that just sitting up and down, moving around is uncomfortable. And that's what you got to think about. Because if it's so big that it is uncomfortable to carry, you're probably not going to carry it. But with the proper holster, it can be done. And with a proper holster, it can be done safely. Overall impressions of the BERETTA 92X. If you like Berettas, I think you'd really, really like this gun. It's got everything that you like in a Beretta. It's got a great trigger. It's got great grips. The gun feels good. It manages the 9mm round very, very well. Very accurate shooting gun. And, you know, if you're a 1911 guy who's just kind of dabbled in Berettas, you might like this a lot, because aside from having a grip safety, it's a lot like a 1911 being single action only and having your frame safety. Considerations, you know, it's a little big, as I've mentioned. For me, it's a little bit bigger than what I would carry. A lot of people, they see a gun, they say it's cool. Man, that's a cool looking gun, I'm going to get that. And I can't tell you how many guns I've bought thinking it would make a good carry gun, until I actually tried to wear that gun around and I realized, okay, I'm glad I've got the gun, but there's no way it's a carry gun. And there seems to be a process that we go through where we have to kind of learn what the maximum size that we as individuals can carry. So for me, this is above that number. Still a great firearm. I think it'd make a great home defense firearm. It's a lot of fun to shoot, so it's a great gun just for practicing, keeping your shooting skills up. Very, very good. Pricing, I've seen these anywhere from $850 to $950, depending on where you look, so I'm not really sure what they're going to be when you go to look for one. So it's not cheap, but my experience with Berettas is they're good quality. They're very good shooting guns, and for me, I would rather pay a little more for a gun that's really good quality than pay a little less for a gun that's maybe not so good a quality. And that's just me. I'd rather save my money. If I'm looking at something, I'd rather save a little bit longer and get the better thing just to have fewer problems. So if it's in your budget and you like this size, you know, and you like the configuration, if you like the idea of single action only, I think you might enjoy it. Like I say, it's heavy. With a good holster, it can be managed. It's a lot of weight for me, and it's not something I'd be comfortable carrying on a daily basis. But I really like the gun. So in summary, it's a great featured, excellent shooting, reliable firearm. But it's a little on the big side. So if that doesn't bother you, then, you know, it's something you might want to look at. But it's a great gun overall. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today. As always, we appreciate you being with us. We'll be back very soon with another video. And as always, everybody be safe and have a great day. Thank you.